Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting. I think the time is 6:30, roughly speaking, by these clocks. First of all, some housekeeping. There are no fire alarms expected this evening, and therefore, should the fire alarm sound, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the side and rear of this room. Go downstairs and then go and meet in War Memorial Park, where no doubt somebody will count us to make sure that we're all there. Could you also please note that the meeting is being webcast live on the internet, and I'm assuming, since I can see a picture in front of me, that it is working. Good, thank you. And could all of you who have mobile phones with you please turn them off, or if you put them to silent, make sure you don't leave them on the table, those of you who have tables in front of you, because the vibration is just as annoying. Good. So we move to the agenda. The first is apologies for absence, and quite clearly there are no absentees this evening. The second is declarations of interest. Councillor Isaac.
Leader, I have no disclosable pecuniary interest in relation to the redevelopment of the leisure park. I am, however, a part-time consultant to Montague Evans, who are providing important advice to the council on the leisure park. I have no financial relationship with Montague Evans in relation to the leisure park. I'm always careful to abide by the code of conduct as a councillor, and indeed the ethical code that I adhere to as a chartered surveyor. However, on the advice of the head of law and monitoring officer, it's necessary tonight to ensure that there's no possible public perception of a conflict of interest by me, so I will not participate in the decision-making vote.
Thank you very much, Councillor Isaac, and therefore, as Councillor Isaac will not be staying for the debate or for the vote, it is appropriate that the paper should be introduced by somebody different, in this case by Councillor Tate, as the community, as the portfolio holder who has communities within his portfolio. Before we get that far, just the other couple of items on the agenda. Urgent matters, there are none. Minutes of the meeting of the 15th of March, which you have all had copies because they're in your cabinet papers. Are you happy that I sign those later on? When we get to that stage, then I will do that at that particular moment in time. And so we come to the only item on the agenda for this evening, which is the proposed redevelopment of Basingstoke Leisure Park. Now, can I say right at the beginning of this item that if you have seen the cabinet papers, you will see that a large amount of them are pink papers, which cover a lot of detail. If anybody, that's either visiting councillors or cabinet members, wishes to raise any item that is relevant to those pink papers arising from and quotes from them, then we shall have to go into confidential session at that point in time, and I will have to ask that the room be cleared of those people who are not any members of the press or public who are here at that stage, and then come back at a later stage. So I would ask you all to assist me and give me advice of that before you speak, if you are going to do so. And if anybody inadvertently strays into those areas, I will try and pick it up, but I can't promise that I'm going to have complete control, knowledge of all of the detail that is in here and where it lies. So I have two speakers, Councillor Westbrook, followed by Councillor Potter. And we'll begin by, Councillor Westbrook, if you want to come forward, I shall begin by asking Councillor Tate to introduce the paper. Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Leader. In introduction this report, I think it's worth reminding ourselves of the potential prize that this redevelopment scheme offers the borough. A potential doubling of size of our leisure park to some 500,000 square feet, whilst safeguarding two key elements of today's park, namely the aquadrome and milestones. A potential of some 2,500 to 2,400 new jobs to the borough, and a potential increase in the business rates to the borough. But in addition to that, a new designer outlet centre of up to 300,000 square feet. This proposal is, in my opinion, unique in the UK market and offers the opportunity for Basingstoke to offer itself as a leisure destination on a regional and potentially a national stage, and fully complements all the other cultural, leisure and development offerings in our borough. The report before us tonight asks for a decision to be made that will allow the project to continue its progress. It doesn't seek to define, apart from the basic concept, the leisure park as it will be at the end. The report summarises the work and outcomes to date, which resulted in the heads of terms, and however it should be noted that this is only one milestone in what will be many in the continuum of this project. And as we progress further, there will be significant points at which this project may fail, and there will be an opportunity for significant discussion at committee and consultation with the public that will be important in determining the final outcome. However, today we've reached a point where, to make continued progress and take what is an opportunity in the market, decisions need to be made, and these namely are to approve and issue a contract award notice, to agree the heads of terms with New River Retail for the redevelopment of the leisure park, and to agree to enter into development agreement and lease with New River, subject to completion of the precondition outlined in the heads of terms and the provision of satisfactory updated scheme viability assessments. So there are two further decisions tonight. One is to delegate the legal documentation, and two, to agree in principle to the compulsory purchase orders to assist in the site assembly, subject to a recommendation to full council, and the council receiving cost indemnity. That also fall into recommendations for decision. So I hope that we can look forward to a positive discussion and decision tonight, and fully commend the work of all parties that have brought us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tate. Councillor Westbrook, good evening. And you have, as you, I'm sure, are aware, 4 minutes.
I've no intention of veering into pink papers, as far as I know. I'd like to start by saying that we're fully behind the regeneration of our leisure park, but we need the right sort of regeneration, a regeneration that this council had in mind when developing policy SS9 and the local plan. We've heard previously about all the tourists who are expected to visit and how much money they all intend to spend here. But whatever retail is on the park, people will still visit to swim, skydive or have a meal, whether they buy a designer handbag or not. We need to remember whose interests we represent, and as their representatives we need to make sure their voices are heard. Where do the residents of the borough fit into this? We haven't adopted this kind of strategy with any other major project. And any other our major projects, like many down there, are finding out through public consultation what residents actually want and expect prior to development partners being involved or any agreement being signed. Without that consultation and the early views of our residents, who I imagine will be the primary users, how can we know that the type of leisure, the type of restaurants, the type of shops, the type of parking and the effects on infrastructure that has been chosen for them is right? The timetable for public consultation is only due to start once this agreement is put in place, and so my question is, where will this project be if after such a belated public consultation the findings show that residents aren't happy with the project, or that there is a possibility that the town centre or their local neighbourhood centres could be damaged from the impact of a certain type of retail? What happens if in 2018 our own planning committee upholds our original definition of ancillary, i.e. in the context and vein in which it was originally written? This surely needs further exploration. I noticed, Leader, that you commented in the press after the government planning inspector had declared the local plan sound by saying that, and I quote, "This now gives us clarity in planning terms." Well, the local plan will now come under the real test of being put into practice, because even after all the modifications, policy SS9 has still remained the same in its clarity and intention. Stating, and I quote, "New and improved leisure facilities will be permitted at Basingstoke Leisure Park where there is no significant adverse impact on existing town or district centres within Basingstoke. Retail development on the leisure park will only be supported where it remains ancillary to the new or existing leisure uses, and is required to make the new provision economically viable without detriment to the borough's defined retail areas." Before I finish, I'd just like to put the record straight. The last time this project was discussed publicly, Councillor Isaac said, and I quote, "So let's not swallow this argument we get constantly from the Labour group that any change is to be prevented and is a negative thing." This is absolutely not the case. In fact, we find that Councillor Isaac no longer holding the reins on this is anything but negative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I now have Councillor Potter.
Good evening, Leader and
Good
Cabinet.
evening, Councillor Potter. And as you know, you too have 4 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. I'll also give you the same assurance. I'll seek not to stray onto the pink papers. I don't think I'm going to refer to them even indirectly. Well, I do say on record, I mean, I find it deplorable that we end up with 80% of the documentation in front of us tonight on pink papers. And many of those, by my analysis, are non-confidential. Even some of those that relate to matters of correspondence between New River and the Chief Executive here on matters which I've been associated with, which I don't think any privilege has been claimed on, so I'm bemused by that. Obviously, I find myself in this sort of ritual exchange really with Cabinet, just taking a few minutes seeking to get Cabinet not to take a decision which they've already decided to take some time ago, but it's a process we go through. I'm impressed by Councillor Tate's ability, obviously, to pick up the brief at the 13th hour. He really is the go-to Cabinet member, I think, really. Mind you, if it turns out to be a poison chalice, you'll know who to blame. There are a couple of things which I want to talk through, if I may. I do believe, genuinely, this is a case of the tail wagging the dog. Having devised a situation where New River is the only show in town, everything is fitted around their aspirations and business plan. The retail business consultants, FSP, and I can refer to their report because it isn't in pink, which I read together with the Carter-Jonas report, makes it clear that New River is being unrealistic in its estimation of the type of designer brands they can attract to Basingstoke in the face of competition elsewhere. They also conclude, as I do, that New River is not experienced in this field and, according to FSP, are more likely to attract mid-range brands rather than the premium brands hoped for. Why is this so important? Well, paragraph 9.16 of the report makes it clear that should the New River vision for the designer outlet prove unviable, then the whole scheme would not proceed. So clearly a lot hinges on that, just about everything, I think. FSP recommends that the assumptions supporting the project should be further explored with a full commercial assessment of the outlet centre and potential occupiers. By any analysis, this assessment should be completed before the development agreement with New River is signed. Any other action will be highly irresponsible by the portfolio holder in this Cabinet. The impact on Festival Place also needs to be taken into account. We know that we're losing British Home stores, the last of a number of stores in Festival Place to be affected by a number of changing shopping patterns, and Festival Place needs support urgently. I wish also to refer to one other aspect of the report under para 9.19, which deals with traffic flows. Bear in mind you're planning on something like 3,300 car spaces at this retail park. In respect to the traffic flows, the report states that it will be important to limit the primary access being through residential roads to West Ham Roundabout, whatever that means. When you add this to the impact of the golf course, Handsome Fields and Manidown developments, I wonder what the good people of Kemshott and Buckskin will feel about their primary access being limited whenever they leave home. Simply, it is wrong to take this decision this evening. There is much more work to be done on the project, and it will be irresponsible of the Cabinet to enter into a legal agreement with New River at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tate, do you, please would you respond to some of those points?
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Firstly, just addressing the points from Councillor Westbrook. In whose interests do the potential redevelopment of the leisure park lie? Frankly, they lie in all of the residents of Basingstoke and the borough, in that we are in a position where we potentially will be able to achieve significant investment in a leisure park, and at the same time allow us to potentially increase the general wealth of the borough and its well-being. So I think it's a very clear opportunity to benefit all the residents. Where do they fit in? Well, within the planning of the development as we go forward now, there are opportunities for discussion and consultation, which will be in various committees, and consultation which will be led by New River. So I think that whilst we have reached a point where we need and want to make a decision to move forward, and that moving forward will bring the opportunities that I think the Council is seeking for greater definition and greater involvement of the community to define some of the more detailed aspects that they're interested in. The question also is about viability, and this is something which clearly we are in a position where we could achieve significant inflow of capital to invest, which is at very limited, if no risk, to the Council. But that depends on the viability of the project. And part of the testing of the viability that you've brought forward is that as you get into a more defined approach with the developer, by putting ourselves into a more formal agreement, then we can start developing more detailed approaches, and they will start feeling valued enough to start putting significant actually finance into developing the models of viability, which ultimately all this hinges on. I think it's not, there is no such thing as a done deal at this stage. I think there are plenty of opportunities for things to develop in a negative way. I sincerely hope they won't, and I believe that we have the basis for a very strong potential future with this project. But you know, whether it's about viability or mix or many other aspects of this, planning, many aspects of this, and it addresses some of Councillor Potter's points as well. There are opportunities in here for discussion and also for potential difficulty, which may or may not stop this project dead. However, at this stage, to go further, we have to make some decisions, and we can't keep analysing, because at some stage the potential partners will not seek to analyse any further because they have no potential definition as to whether they will be able to achieve the project at all. So I think we have to make a decision. That making no decision is not an answer. Moving on to Councillor Potter's comments. I think traffic flow is a question, yes. I mean, the potential is, I think that the work to date indicates that there is a viability in the traffic flow. Whether that's true or not will be tested more thoroughly as the models become developed in more detail. So it's not answered, it is questioned, but it says in the report, is their solution doable? Yes, it is, but to do that you have to go further. And talking about the development of the designer outlet, it is true to say that designer outlets don't start at the top. They grow in terms of their value, and brands are attracted by success. So there is a question about pitching the brands that are appropriate to the designer in the right way, which gives us the immediate growth and then allows us to become more successful in the future. So it's not true to say immediately it's top-end brands. It has to grow, it has to be successful. But at the same time, it is fair to say that also that we as a council and a cabinet are have to be careful and cautious that we are achieving the right mix, so that we are developing the town centre and the town centre shops at the same time as we are also then developing this new destination of a designer outlet centre. So I'm afraid I can't agree with Councillor Potter at all, that to say it's just wrong to make a decision. No, I don't think that at all. I think it's right to make a decision at this particular time, right for all the reasons that I've suggested, but more importantly right because to get to the stage of moving to a position where a final decision will be made after all the work's been done, we have to go further and we have to make commitments to the potential partner in this particular project. So I understand the concerns, but I don't agree at all with the idea that actually this is a wrong decision. I think it's entirely the right decision to make at this particular time.
Right, thank you. Members, before Councillor Isaac leaves us, do we have any questions for him at this stage in terms of clarifying any of the points in the report, because he has, after all, been very closely involved in the preparation of the report up until now? Or are we happy that things are fairly clear? Good. Good. I have one question before you go. Just, from your experience on dealing with developments of a fairly large nature over the years, is this a fairly normal process to be going through in terms of agreeing heads of terms and then into a development agreement and then on from that?
I think that the work that's been done is very thorough, and I congratulate the officers on all the hard work that has gone into this. This is, by its very nature, a very complicated development proposal, and as Councillor Tate has remarked, there are still lots of questions that need to be answered, and it's a work in progress. But I'm clear that we're putting in the safeguards that will enable this council along the road, if at any point it's clear that there are problems or that things are not going to develop in the way that we wish them to do, that we are in a position to call the process to an end. But I'm clear also that we have in New River a good potential partner. They are a significant property company with assets of £600 million. They are the property developer of the year in 2014 for retail and leisure, and so I think that we've got a very strong partner who's showing a great deal of commitment so far in taking it to this stage, a lot of it at risk, and they are going to continue to be at risk for the period ahead. So I think that we have here a good process, and we have ensured that this council is receiving very good advice throughout.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. In that case, you are excused, as it were. And for the benefits of those who can't see on the webcast, Councillor Isaac has now left the room. Well, members, what do we think? Councillor Leach has got in first.
Thank you, Leader. Firstly, I just want to say I will be supporting this paper tonight. I think it's very positive, and I think we can't miss this opportunity. I think Councillor Tate introduced it very well and said everything the positive, and we've got to keep our eye on the prize and deal with this. This is just the start of the journey. We're not committing ourselves to this happening. I hope it happens, but it will be dealt with properly and everything looked at. Just being the cabinet member for the environment, I have had a number of conversations with local wildlife groups and people interested in that side of things on the concerns about Saunders Field. So I just wanted to bring that up and just say something very briefly on Saunders Field. The plans that are put forward sound very interesting, and I'm sure local people will want to use that open space and be able to access it more easily, and obviously for free. But also we need to keep our eye on the fact, and I'm confident that officers are keeping this or taking this on board, and this is all part of the plan, that first of all that there's the thing that it could be a flood alleviation site, and it wouldn't be needed for measures to alleviate flood in Buckskin, and it is a really important ecological area, so we must protect that important aspect. But I am confident that that is being looked at, and will ensure that as the time goes on that is being kept under consideration. And just the last thing I wanted to mention, I'm sure it will come up, I know that it's been said of the concerns about the town centre, but this retail outlet, if it goes ahead, is very different retail to what a town centre will offer. It's a niche area of retail, and I think that it would probably complement the shops in the town centre. The shops that will come to the retail outlet wouldn't come to a town centre, and it may even mean that if we can have a link between the town centre and the leisure park, that it will increase the footfall to the town centre. But I'm not sure, I really don't see the negatives of it. I think it's a positive thing, and I think we'll keep the freehold, so as the leaseholders we can make sure that the town centre and the leisure park are not in competition from the brands they sell, and I think it's really positive.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Oswald, I think.
Thank you, Leader. I shall be voting for this tonight because the leisure is in my portfolio, and Basingstoke is well known and respected borough with regard to its leisure facilities, and the actual leisure park is tired and does need regenerating to provide the facilities and leisure which our residents deserve. So I think it's important, and we have been told this is work in progress. It will go forward, and we are receiving excellent advice on the actual proposal. So I think that we should go forward with it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raphael.
Leader, I think this is a very exciting proposal, and everyone I've spoken to, and I've spoken to quite a number of people ever since it was launched in the Basingstoke Gazette and on their front page, have said that they just can't wait for both elements of this to be open. There's no doubt that the leisure park needs substantial investment, and I say that not because it's in my portfolio, but because I'm one of the few councillors who goes down the flumes, and I'm sure you can believe that as well. And as far as I'm concerned, it needs to be improved, and I have family who want to use the leisure park and will continue to want to use the leisure park in years to come. Indeed, the cinema there I used as a boy. I mean, it really does need substantial investment. And it's great to hear some councillors quoting the local plan. It's my first opportunity publicly to say how wonderful it is the inspector's report has come about, and that it's brought us an element of stability, hopefully, for the future. And it's great to hear councillors who perhaps didn't support it now quoting the policies within the plan. The retail development on the park will only be supported where it remains ancillary to the new or existing leisure uses and is required to make the new provision economically viable. Well, of course, that does apply here, because we're here talking about the leisure park. We're not here to talk about a designer outlet centre on its own. So the choice for us is a leisure park, or a leisure park with a design outlet centre as part of that to assist in it becoming economically viable, which therefore fulfills the policy, because it is ancillary to it and it makes it economically viable. And the report indicates quite properly, and appeals to our common sense and knowledge of these things. So those who have been to leisure parks and outlets before will know that the two actually work well together and support each other, because both can become a destination and both can attract a group of people going, perhaps with different interests and different strengths, and can make spend more time at the combined both the outlet and the leisure park combination. So that in itself is a bonus, and then on top of that, of course, the designer outlet centre, its attraction, because of course it is drawing in people from a wider field, from an hour's journey, or even, I think, actually further than an hour's journey, into the designer outlet centre, which again will increase the footfall through the leisure park, which again will contribute to its success. And therefore it just is a wonderful opportunity for us. And whilst there will be issues that will be raised, some we probably haven't anticipated, some which have been anticipated and still need to be answered, but this must be progressed for the benefit of all the residents in the borough and for future generations of the borough, as it puts the leisure park onto hopefully a very sound and successful footing for the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Mrs. Reid.
Thank you, Leader. Not surprisingly, I'm going to say that I intend to support this paper. I also will disagree with those visiting councillors who suggest that we shouldn't be making this decision. I think we're absolutely right to be making this decision now. We're right to explore this, what is an amazing opportunity for a delivery of a vastly enhanced leisure offer plus designer outlet for no investment on our part. And which council in the country wouldn't actually jump at that opportunity and want to explore it further? And we'd be doing a disservice to our residents, I think, if we didn't. And if you also look at the very positive response from residents when this went public in December, I think they'd be very disappointed with us if we didn't actually take it forward and want to find out more about it and begin further with the project. Town centre has been mentioned, so I'll refer to that obviously because that's within my portfolio. Just to emphasise our commitment to the town centre, we have the town centre project, we have the investment that we've already put into regenerating the top of town, and that's investment not just in terms of money, but in terms of resource and a major commitment to working with town centre to continue to improve the town centre offer. Why on earth would we want to do something that would damage it? Of course we wouldn't. Of course we wouldn't. Our commitment is very clear, and we will continue with that, and we will continue to work with the town centre, with Festival Place, with obviously the new bid board, with the top of town, to see how in fact the new offer, if it comes forward, is complementary to what we already have in the town centre and can actually attract more visitors and more spending and more footfall into the town centre. Because we have to be aware that there is a risk if we don't do this that someone else will do it. There's clearly an unmet demand in the M3 corridor for this kind of offer, and if we don't do it and if someone else does it, then those additional visitors and the additional spending that we could be having in Basingstoke will go elsewhere, but we'll still take the hit in terms of an impact on the town centre. So of course we want to explore this and see whether it will work, and we need to work further with the town centre, as I've said, to make sure that there's a complementary offer and that what happens in the leisure park has a positive impact on the town centre because there's cross-fertilisation between the two, and you have spending happening in the leisure park which is also taken into the town centre and is spent there as well. So I support the paper.
Thank you very much indeed. So if I just sum up at the end of this, this is undoubtedly an ambitious project, and it's quite rightly an ambitious project because this town deserves to have the ambition, deserves to have the aspiration to have the very best facilities that it can have for its residents. And we have, as we heard earlier on, the local plan on the verge of being adopted. That local plan will bring in another 35,000 population to our town. Those people will also need the very best in facilities available to them at that time. I find it hard to think of where else you could go where you could get £200 million worth of investment at no cost to the council. That surely is an opportunity which has to be grasped, if it can be grasped. We're right at the beginning of the process. There is a long way to go. Nobody who's had any experience of this type of project would ever say that you can get all the I's dotted, the T's crossed, all the questions answered right from day one. If you do that, actually all you finish up with is analysis paralysis. You don't move forward. What we're being asked to agree this evening is effectively an agreement to agree, to take us to the next stage with, as we've heard, a whole series of caveats right the way through the process of future development that will make sure that the best interests of the council and therefore of our residents are being protected at every stage, with risk being minimised as far as the council is concerned, the majority of the risk going to New River. I think on that basis it is potentially an exceptionally good deal for the town. I think if you put it into the context of what we are then looking at seeing, with the development of Melly Down over the next 10 to 15 years, with the redevelopment that is now starting, with the decision that we made at our last meeting on Plot O, on Basingview, and then the agreement in council to support that. We are starting to see the redevelopment at that end of the town. We are starting to see a lot of improvements within the town centre. It's part of a total package of redesigning the scope that is of what is Basingstoke and the facilities that it has within it, and I remain firmly convinced that this will lead to exactly the level of scope of facility that is not just the best that is available for any town, but because it will be on a regional proportion, will actually provide facilities to our residents way above what you might otherwise expect if you lived in a town of our size. That has to be a prize worth going for. I have to say personally, I have not come across anybody who hasn't said, what a great idea. I think this is a fantastic idea. And I think most of them would also share the impatience, as which we probably all share. Could we have it yesterday rather than in 5 or 6 years' time? A long way to go, a lot of difficult decisions, no doubt, along the line. It is not for us this evening to prejudge what happens in planning and what the decision will be made at that stage. That is very clearly part of the process and quite rightly a separate part of the process. But I am very happy to propose the decisions in the decision notice, which I will just for the sake of the record repeat now, which is to approve the issue and publication of a contract award notice to New River Retail, to agree to enter into the heads of terms with New River Retail for the redevelopment of the leisure park, to agree to enter into a development agreement and lease with New River Retail in respect of the leisure park redevelopment, subject to completion of preconditions outlined in the heads of terms and provision of a satisfactory updated scheme viability assessment. Delegate the agreement of the detail of the legal documentation to the portfolio holder for communities, service delivery and improvement in consultation with the Executive Director of Finance and Resources and the Head of Law and Governments. And finally, to agree in principle to the use of a compulsory purchase order or orders to assist in site assembly where this may be required, subject to a recommendation to full council accordingly, and to the council receiving a cost indemnity from New River Retail. So that's what we are asked to agree. Are we all agreed?
Yes, we're agreed.
Good. Thank you very much. So that is the end of the main items on the agenda this evening. I just have one other point to make, and that is that this evening is Councillor Rossington's last Cabinet meeting, as she retires in just on a month's time. And so, Cathy, could I, on behalf of all the Cabinet members that you served with over the last few years, and indeed I think I would dare to say on behalf of the Council as a whole, very many thanks for all your hard work and your total commitment to the cause. There's never a day goes past when you're not here, and sometimes I suspect you've been here since 7 o'clock in the morning and don't go home till 10 at night. So I can also thank David for his suffering during the time while you've been putting on that. But it really has been wonderful to have you with us on the Cabinet. Tremendous amount of very hard work being put in, and I think a lot of the fruits of which we will see to come further down the line, because it's the nature of the role, particularly you've been carrying out in the last few years of working in partnership. You don't see instant results. It builds and it builds as it goes forward. So for all of that, thank you very much indeed. And on that sad but happy note, if you see what I mean, we'll draw the meeting to a conclusion. Thank you all very much.